Hi everybody, welcome to this week's meeting for MMO Design and Concept Art. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Derek Stevens will not be able to be here today. So this is Steve and I'll be taking over class for the evening, which basically means I'll be immediately turning it over to the students as they put together some character development tonight. So with that, can I get everybody pulled in and let's get NATO off and running? And we'll see where we go.
Hello.
Oh wow.
Hello, everyone.
There we go.
Hello.
Right, who do you have here today?
Is my microphone working?
Yes, whoever that was. Who is it?
Okay, it's Iron Soul.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we've got Iron, Ron, Wolf, Jizba. Those are the ones I know of.
We got Steve.
Well, kind of. As much as you ever do.
Yeah, that's true.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So, this week, I've been kind of thinking through some more character ideas. I've been talking with some people on the forums about the current design document and kind of how we're fitting the MMO RPG concepts into the MOBA style gameplay. There's quite a good discussion on the boards over that in the concept design document or game design document post on the forums.
Is this the one?
That is currently the game concept document, which is quite short. It needs to be fleshed out a bit. But to do that, I kind of would like to get a better grip on what kind of people are expecting from this game, which is what the whole purpose of having the discussion about character types is. Now, some people have said that character types is not well defined enough to base anything from, but it might just be a slight miscommunication on my part. Character types is just a generic term to really give the idea of so
basically you're saying is what do people think is fun to play?
Yeah, it's sort of what in this world grabs you. What kind of characters do you want to play? What do you want those characters to be able to do? Do you want someone who fights in melee with swords, or do you want someone who uses a rifle at range, or do you want to have some kind of mage, or it's all these kind of options. Last week, one of the things that came up was the idea of having a hacker. Now, this is a really good example of the things I'm looking for, because Derek said he'd like to have a hacking character, and he came up with a few different ideas of how that could work. But it made me go away and sit down and think about how a hacking character could work in the gameplay mechanics that I'm thinking of, and that kind of affects how I design the combat system.
As far as a hacker thing, you could also have a hacker without having a hacker class. It could be kind of a subclass, like it could be an engineer that specializes on the hacking side, or maybe you actually choose a second, like a subclass thing for each thing. So engineer, you could do a few different things, but one of them could be a hacker engineer, rather than just having one class that's just about hacking.
Yeah. As someone said on BuzzNet there, they listed off jump, dodge, climb, strafe, aim, swim, fly, run, sprint, iron sight view. This isn't quite what I'm looking for. Those would be discrete combat mechanics. What I'm looking for is a general sense, as is on the screen now, of kind of things that things your character does, what they're mainly about. It's similar to how classes were and are in RPG games, such as like D&D or even Skyrim or something like that, where you have a character who has a varying range of abilities based around a sort of core concept. It's these kind of core concepts that I'm trying to get people to come up with. because what I really want to do is link these kind of core concepts to the combat mechanics so that the game world kind of is merged into the combat mechanics on a very kind of high design level.
You know, I found, I think part of, I mean, it's time consuming to try and flesh it out as much as you can, but that's not the only thing that's holding me back. I think I'm realizing that part of it is just I feel like almost like that a sense of wanting to be careful about what I say, because it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, it can be there are things that you can say that can be interpreted in so many different ways that it's just like, oh, I don't want to lead us down a bad
Well,
path.
at this
But
stage,
I think that's a mistake, which I think is what you.
You don't want to say the
yeah.
wrong thing, have
No.
people agree with
What?
it, and then
there are no wrong answers at this stage.
Oh, I see.
That's kind of, there are no
Yeah.
kind of,
But I think
oh,
what we've
well, you want this
said-
kind of character, well, that's just not going to work. No, it's all about getting all the ideas on the table, looking at things, working out whether or not they'll work, and then kind of using that to compile a general idea, a general sense of what characters in this world can do.
Yeah, I don't. I feel like I mean, yeah, we can get ideas down, but it's just like there's so many things. It's like, well, I don't really know if that would be good or not. Like I'd have to, you know, it depends on a
But
lot of other
it's not a
things.
matter of it being
Yeah,
good or not. It's just
I think you just throw it out there, and
Yeah.
then how the game develops is really going to kind of determine what we can and can't do.
like before when you were saying that you could have an engineer character who would be kind of could use some of the same elements as a hacker, but be more about supporting people. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Those sort of ideas, because that gives me that gives me a scope of what players want to do in this game. So it doesn't have to be fleshed out at all or anything like that. It doesn't have to be kind of a really amazing idea or really, you know, as I said, thought out. I mean, I was looking at this earlier, and I thought the idea of having a character who's in a big suit of armor, like a Iron Man suit, as a character type, so they could have abilities where, you know, they use this suit to punch people or throw people or do all that sort of thing. But you know, I kind of just thought that out in a kind of not a very particularly deep manner. But even then, the way I kind of scoped that out is overplaying the area that I want people to think about now.
I remember in Battlefield Bad Company 2, I spent a heap of time doing nothing but playing the medic with the defibrillators. And I wouldn't shoot anyone at all. I would just keep reviving people and throwing med packs down. And I never shot anyone, but I would keep the flow of our soldiers moving towards the enemy, because none of us were actually dying, because I just revived everyone.
Yeah,
I'd be
exactly.
reviving someone every single second, someone would be popping back up and shooting at the enemy.
Yeah. In the case of Battlefield, like I would say that a medic is a character type. You know, in our
When
game,
you say character type, do you mean character role?
they're more explicit than roles. In Battlefield, there are so few character classes, as it were. They are kind of analogous with roles. In something like an MMO, where you have lots of different, let's say WoW, for example, you have warriors or mages or
But when you
rogues,
say role, are you
DPS
referring
characters.
to things like a damage dealer or a tank would be a role?
Yeah. So it's kind of looking at how those roles expand out into different character types. For example, if you look on the post I made earlier, the top one I have there is a melee striker, which is a warrior. So someone who uses weapons to deal damage, uses melee weapons to deal damage. And then further on I have things like the hacker is a ranged character that uses technology to deal damage and support other characters. So it's kind of coming up with the scope of different character abilities, not necessarily all the details.
Are we gonna have melee characters?
You tell me.
Well,
That's what I'm talking about.
I would like
that
a
kind of level.
character who can do anything in their power to disrupt the enemy. They can disable their weapons, they can blow up walls and create rubble to block a path for the enemy, and I want to be able to throw a, I don't know, a poison grenade in there and cause everyone grief.
You guys, it's Richard. How do you hear me?
But they never
Hey,
actually
Richard.
kill anyone. Oh, hey, Richard.
So you'd want like kind of like a sapper character whose main role is to kind of disrupt and control the enemy movement.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, there are there's scope for that kind of thing. I will add it to the list.
I was thinking about your
yeah.
I was thinking about your hacker idea. What if that was the one class that could modify weapons and could basically blend text between the two sides?
I think you would get into an issue with balance there, because you end up having sort of n number of combinations.
Do you think he'd end up being too overpowered?
I think it would be too exploitable. It would require a lot of balance. It would require a lot of tweaking to get it perfect. So yeah, it's one of those things that requires thought. It kind of breaks the idea I had where characters have discrete abilities that are in of themselves, rather than sort of melding between different things, like Eric's initial concept of a hacker being placed in a single place on the map and then controlling robots around the map. It's kind of that concept was sort of breaking my idea of keeping power within a character, because it's projecting power out to different locations around the map. And I would be concerned that melding technology between human and Alethian on the fly in battle would be unbalanced.
Right. Why not be a human if you can be on the human side and do everything, or just be it? Otherwise, you're limiting yourself to just the Alethian side, who can only do the Alethian stuff.
It's
right?
partly that, and it's also partly that you kind of, if you can meld, if you have a weapon that you can meld with other weapons on the battlefield, as a designer you have to then look at every single weapon on the battlefield that could possibly be there and work out A, what the melding would be, and B, whether that would, and how will you balance that, and kind of see, would that be fair to other players, would that actually kind of work in a kind of fair.
Oh man. Now I
now
want to play Kirby the Crystal Shards.
So I always thought the hacker class makes more sense in PvE. Being able to do stuff that way.
I don't see how it would work in
Sorry, it's Richard.
In an explicitly MOBA environment. I don't know how a hack would work well. It'd be balanced.
You would alias out the concept of hacking into something else. So, for example, in the version I was thinking of, it would be based on the fact that the hacker had gained access to the human military hardware, so they could call down airstrikes and airdrops of particular things, like giant robots that they could then control and would follow them around, or just placed objects that would have a buff radius and would buff people and heal people, that kind of thing. And then as a passive, they would possibly gain more gold than other characters as the game progresses, because they've hacked into the banking system, and are siphoning off funds. So it's kind of looking at that character type, looking at what that character does, and applying that concept to the combat mechanics.
I could see the hacker being some sort of access control, like maybe they can open doors that other people can't, and for whatever reason a rocket won't get the job done.
Certainly for the PvE stuff, you could definitely have sort of class-specific things. So if you had a hacker in your party, you could open up a short route through, so you don't have to defeat a load of mobs that you would otherwise have to. But that would be very much a PvE
I'll just hack
perk
into
of playing that
rock.
class.
There's something that I want to bring up that I think has a significant it's significantly relevant, even though it's a little different. But okay, right now we've been pretty much talking about the humans versus the Alethians, but I was thinking that it might be better to have at least the ability to have, even if we do we might have modes where that's all you do, but I was thinking a side against the other side, and so you can have humans and Alethians, but maybe you have a different group of humans that you could pick to go with the more Alethian side, and then there'd be more the human side where you could also have Alethians there, but there would be different classes, different specialities for the. But that way, it actually might be a little more interesting, say, with things like the hacker, because then there would be like humans to hack, or equipment and stuff. I don't know. I think also then you can I don't know. I don't know if we necessarily want to limit it to this side has only humans and this side has only Alethians.
It's certainly something I'd be interested in looking to in the future, but initially I was going to keep it to humans versus Alethians. And what I'd be trying to do is, if there were classes that were specifically on one side, like the hacker, I would have something that mirrored a similar mechanic for the other side.
Yeah.
When we have a second, I also had a point that I was going to bring up regarding melee classes.
You can bring it up now if you want.
Okay. I was just thinking, like even today, military forces and all that kind of stuff, we know how to use guns and whatnot, but they're always trained in hand-to-hand combat, armed or otherwise. So it seems to me that it would be very silly in the future if all of a sudden you don't know how to handle yourself if your weapon stops working for any reason. So I was thinking it would be, I think, well worth the effort to find a way to have both ranged and melee combat essentially be one and the same, where characters might specialize a little bit, but they're all capable of one or the other.
I definitely want I would definitely want there to be melee personally, and I would want some to specialize in melee. I mean, it's not a first-person shooter, so it's not, you're not as trapped in dealing with realism. I mean, look at Final Fantasy, well, the Final Fantasy games, but I was thinking of the 7th one where there's people with guns and there's people with swords, attacking each other, and it just works because it does. It just,
yes,
in that
but in
reality.
Final Fantasy, it's a turn-based
right
system where you don't have to have, there's no real-time system. I am very much considering and expecting there to be both melee-specific and range-specific characters, and characters that may possibly have both. Having all characters to be able to do melee damage as well as any range that they might be able to do, considering that the combat system that I'm scoping out has effectively 5 abilities, one of which is passive, so it's not activated by the player in any way, shape or form, and then an auto attack possibly, depending on how we go on those lines. It doesn't leave much room for a melee, like a by default melee ability.
What do you
would
mean
like
5
to.
abilities?
So have you played something like World of Warcraft?
Just the beta back in the days.
Okay, well, you know how characters in MMOs often have sort of discrete abilities that they can activate at the player's choice that do
Right.
a certain amount of damage, or give the character a buff, or heal them, or do other such things. But they are discrete abilities that the player has to activate.
Yeah, and if a
and-
character does not have that ability, they can't do it.
Yes, exactly.
They can't do anything outside of what is specified for them to be able to do.
Exactly. So most MMOs have kind of a huge range of abilities for a single character type. What I want to do, which is much more like the MOBA gameplay, is have a limited number of abilities. So in this case, approximately 4, with one passive ability, which is something you don't activate that gives your character a bonus, a static bonus. And then potentially have, as I said, auto attacks, and potentially have a few more activated abilities based on items that your characters buy. Now this might seem quite limited, but it really sort of drives the idea of having strategy rather than kind of reaction speed, making sure you're standing in the right place, or just increasing your numbers over whatever you're fighting, whether that's a player or another.
If I understand correctly, Chris, basically you're saying fewer abilities but much more character-specific abilities?
Yes, exactly. So what your character does is really built into your character's abilities, and it kind of very much more reflects the character you're playing.
It feels to me that is less strategy. Do you mean, when you say strategy, do you mean as far as stuff that you would choose before the battle?
No, it's the choice of using, when you use your abilities, which abilities you use, and how you control your character's resource, like for example mana or energy or anything like that. So you can only cast a certain number you can only use a certain number of abilities in a certain time frame. Where the strategy comes in is picking your team, so your team of 5 players with your 5 characters. Sorry, one sec. And the strategy comes in where you kind of come up with a plan, a strategy for your team to win the game, whether that's kind of using your warrior class to tank the opponents, and then having a mage stand behind and throw magic over people's heads and things like that. So I'm getting a little off point here. The main reason why I want to restrict the number of abilities down to, say, 4 or 5 is so that it's easier to balance.
Well, it's like in Magic the Gathering. You have a maximum hand size of 7, which
Yeah,
means
exactly.
at any one time the maximum amount of things that you could do to your enemy is 7. Well, aside from creature-activated abilities, but let's not get into that.
Yeah.
Right, but
That's a good analogy.
unlike Magic, you can't trade on the fly and get new ones and do a lot of different things. It just seems like to me that it's what my biggest problem is with what I find in MMORPGs is that it's you're just waiting for your non-passive abilities to come up, and then you just click on them, and there's not really much thought into them.
This is one of the reasons why.
And figuring out that perfect combination that's just unbeatable, and yeah.
That is one of the problems with having a large number of abilities, because you get into the idea that certain abilities are better than others. If you only have 4 abilities, then there's not much scope to have a perfect combo. They become very situational based, and they become very tactics based. So if a character is running towards you, and they're trying to get into melee range, and you have an ability that slows them, you're going to make sure you've saved that ability to use it then, rather than just using it just as soon as it's off cooldown to do damage. If you understand what I mean.
Right.
So it's that's kind of where the tactics comes in a bit more.
I guess listening to Chris, what I see is when I watch my son play a lot of stuff, he's a very good gamer, but he's a very terrible strategist. And really, whatever he plays, whether he's a tank or a mage or a ranged weaponry, he will immediately put himself into the middle of the fray like he's a tank. He should never play anything but a tank. That's how his head's wired. And he usually gets his butt kicked because he didn't use any strategy. You know, and I guess, yeah, when I hear Chris talk, what I'm hearing is you have these limited abilities, so you need to think about the character you're playing and where their position on the field is going to be and when is the best time to use what ability, because you can't stack 20 different abilities and drop a bomb on the middle of the field.
Okay, yeah.
So in that regard, I guess to me, it does require more strategic gameplay because you don't have this bucket full of resources to throw at every situation. You have to be thinking ahead of time.
You can swap abilities out at your base. So when you're on the field, you can't change your abilities, but when you're at the base, you can.
Okay, but that's very similar to what they did with Guild Wars, the first one. They had it, and then I would get all these interesting skills and stuff, but that I would never use them because I would like I couldn't justify filling one of the limited. I think he had like 7 or something spaces. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was less. But you know, I couldn't. I had a very limited.
You had no reason to move away from what worked.
Yeah, it's something that I could do. I could do this on every situation, but this one is like, well, this would be really interesting. That would make gameplay a lot more interesting, but I can't justify it because you know, it's going to hurt my character too much.
Yeah, that really kind of comes down to designing the abilities rather than the concept of being able to having a limited number and switching them. It's really about instead of making something better than anything else, it's really about sort of giving flavor and giving different gameplay styles via the abilities you pick.
There's a different way of handling what Steve was talking about as far as just having this bucket load of skills that you can just click, 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 click in some combination is to make it to where you click one of, say, similar skills set and they all go on cooldown. So you can't just go, so you have to click on something that's appropriate to your current situation, and you want to, you know, things that you want to save. It's like, well, maybe you don't do this if you think, oh, I got to save because this is probably going to happen, so I'm going to save for that because that's going to really screw me up if I allow that. You know, so that way you have options, and you're allowed to do more creative and rare things as far as skills, but you can't just spam them. Go ahead.
I think I know what you're saying. Can I say something?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it comes more down to the current play style that particular character wants to use. What sort of effects they want to have on the battlefield. How do they want the enemies to be forced to react to them? So you could swap your abilities out for a completely different play style, depending on the situation.
Yeah, and then
But
after that, I think it comes down to just balancing what abilities you allow for each character and making sure one ability isn't overwhelming, isn't the obvious go-to ability no matter what, you know?
Now these abilities, I just want to be clear, they are related to the character or the weapons that they're using?
To the character.
Okay.
So,
all right, uncomfortable silence. Excellent.
Was that in response to what I said? Because I didn't understand the connection.
I wanted to be clear on my from my point of view because like I was basically looking at it as if you've got, you know, a couple of different weapons on your character when you go into the fight, then if they were related to the weapons that you're carrying, then switching those weapons would change your abilities. But if it's not related to that, then...
I was talking to the person before you.
Oh, sorry.
Get lost on who's saying
me?
what. I don't know who was saying it, but so I mean,
when I was talking about balancing the abilities.
well, it doesn't matter. Just what do people think about what I said about having it so you can't spam you know, my solution, and I mean, there's different ways of handling that. I mean, that you can also deal with things like stamina and whatnot, but having more options but not being able to spam it, so you really have to think about which ones you actually want to use, and if you use ones that maybe you shouldn't, maybe aren't really that effective for the situation, and then when something else happens, you don't have a good counter to it.
My argument against that is it kind of removes the idea of having a meaningful choice. If you have access to all your things, in a situation where you haven't been attacked, nothing's happened to you yet, and you have access to all your things, any choice you make is essentially meaningless because there's no basis kind of around that choice. Whereas if you only have your kind of 4 abilities, which have pre-selected, you know what your character can do, you know the situations that are dangerous for you, and therefore you know the choices to kind of make early on. So if you know that you are at risk from being attacked by melee characters, and you have a slow ability, you will keep that in reserve for as long as you can if you know there's someone with melee on the field who might try and attack you. Otherwise, if you have an ability that has slow, there's nothing kind of, you don't have to think as consciously about whether that's on cooldown or is that in the same group as something that has cooldown on it. You know what I mean? If you're going to restrict what players can do, you should really leave it up to them to keep in mind the restrictions. You shouldn't just sort of negate the restrictions you're placing on them by that kind of grouping system. That's my thoughts on it anyway.
I didn't
If
follow
they choose
that.
a wrong combination, they choose the wrong combination of abilities, they should be punished by way of losing the game.
Or they should be punished by taking lots of damage. In the sense that...
Well, in Magic the Gathering, if you have a really crappy hand and you don't redraw it, or if you put your deck together incorrectly, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Someone who's got a better deck and is able to play the game better than you will win.
Yes, but it is a one-on-one environment, for one thing, most of the time. And also, it's a lot more kind of discreet. You can't sort of die in Magic and then come back and try again, which you can in MMOs and you can in MOBA games. So it's not that if you pick the wrong abilities to use on your character, you are going to lose. It's more, you might have to rethink your strategy.
Your characters can die and then be brought back.
Yeah, exactly. Your
And you just
character.
see yourself, you with your 20 life as the base.
That's true, actually. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think you guys are just looking at it from 2 different angles.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you play poorly, you can die. That doesn't mean the team you're on will die. But you know, someone else might play well enough to save the team despite your idiocy. But
other than slow, what are you seeing? That's okay. That's one of the other 3 non-passive skills. That could be.
Well, this is partly what I was referring to before about character types. Slow is an example of an ability a character could have on them, but there are a lot more. It's kind of to the point where if you ask me to list them, my brain just goes, well, there are so many.
I mean, well, just because, I mean, you're usually going to have things like one that does more damage or maybe causes bleed or something like that, but there's like I don't know. I mean, it all depends on the cooldown and stuff, but usually in games there's really no reason not to just click them when they happen. And if the cooldown is such a long time that it really matters, you want to save it for the right person, to do damage on. There's going to be a lot of time where you're just doing nothing but just kind of watching your attack animation, and it just
I think you're expecting fights to be a lot longer than I am. I'm expecting fights to be over relatively quickly. So, like you may only have to use your ability an ability 3 times off its cooldown.
Yeah.
In a fight.
But why would in that case? Why wouldn't you just spam your abilities? Because it's going to be over.
Because of the specific writing, the way you design the abilities and the way you kind of design your characters and what abilities they have and how they interact really defines on when you'll want to use them. It's very difficult off the bat just to give you an example because it's really quite complex and it really comes into how the combat system is designed. But kind of like to take an example from League of Legends, which is something I didn't really want to do, there's a character called Ashe who is a archer who uses ice. He has ice arrows. One of her abilities is toggleable. You can turn it on for cost of mana. Every arrow you shoot will slow someone, and it will do normal damage. The next ability is a wide area sort of fan of arrows that slows anything that it hits. And like her third ability, if I remember correctly, it's an arrow that goes out to a distance and then reveals something in the distance. And then her fourth ability is a giant ice arrow that shoots across the map and hits anyone, ignoring terrain. Now, there's lots and lots of different mechanics in that. Like you won't want to use the fan ability on a single target. You won't want to use the ice arrow ability on anything other than, say, a champion because it's not worth the mana expenditure on something small like a minion. And it's not something like if you want to save up your ultimate ability, which is this ice arrow on this character, you will not want to spam your kind of fanning ability or your ice arrow ability to because you'll want to save your resource for the right moment to fire this bigger final ability. I probably haven't conveyed that wonderfully well, but it's all in the writing of the abilities. It's all in the design of what your character can do.
So your basic point is that you feel that if you have a character has a lot of abilities, that they're not going to have to be as thoughtful because they're just going to have more abilities to use, and they're just going to go click, 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 click. That kind of thing.
Partly, it's also the fact that if you look at something like WoW, most characters have like an escape ability. Most characters have kind of if they're not a ranged character, have a special sort of ranged ability so they can hit things at range if they need to. They have all these kind of this extra baggage over their kind of 5 or 6 abilities they would use actually generally in combat. So for a rogue, you have your not routine, but you have your system of attacking something, which might only be 5 or 6 abilities. But if something happens, you have that huge pool of other abilities that will let you get out of any situation or respond to a situation that comes up. My argument is that if you have a limited number of abilities, you don't have all these other extra baggage that you can use at any time at will. It makes you think a lot more about what your character is doing, where they are, how your abilities are, whether they're not on cooldown or not. So it kind of stops you just sitting there pressing things as they come off refresh. The trick is also to make sure that you don't have any abilities that just do straight damage to a character or to a minion or something like that, because that will just encourage the player just to spam it. It's often kind of necessary to twin it with some other ability, some other attribute, so that it does something specific as well as doing damage.
With the abilities that do straight damage, I know I'm being a Magic the Gathering again. They solve by those sorts of abilities are generally really weak, and you really want a weak ability taking up space for something that would do some other effect. It's not straight damage. but is most likely more advantageous.
Hmm.
Because if you
It's
only
also
have
worth
5
noting.
slots, then do you really want a weak direct damage ability? And sometimes you do. It could be strategically good for your playstyle.
Well, they had one of the things back in the first Guild Wars that skill that seemed like interesting is like, but I couldn't really justify it because I couldn't uh, use it enough. But that it would do something like more damage, or maybe more damage and knock someone down or something if they were moving while you hit them. And I thought that was kind of interesting to just situational things, which I kind of like. And you know, you could do something like I don't know, maybe kind of a risk with something that just does straight damage that like if you miss, you're kind of you're kind of in it. It's almost like, it's not like being dazed, but you put all your energy into this heavy swing or something if you're, you know, put in a melee or something, and then so you're kind of left vulnerable. So if you miss, so you might want to, I don't know, save that until maybe someone's fighting someone else. You hit them in the back with that, or if they're stunned, you hit them with that, or something like that.
Yeah, you wait until you have a definite advantage in using it.
Or
Yeah,
or
exactly.
if their stam, you can tell that they've used a lot of their stamina stuff. They go, okay, they're not going to be able to, you know,
Dodge.
as
Yeah,
well, or
exactly.
use a
It's making
dodge skill.
using abilities a
Oh, right.
meaningful choice
9
rather
minutes.
than just random decision or rote learning routine or whatever it's called. I can't
Oh,
remember what.
we only have
you
9
refer
minutes
to
left
it.
in the hour.
Wow.
Yeah, we are closing quick. All right, so what do we want to accomplish before we actually leave today?
Well, I've got 2 things to put forward.
Okay.
The first thing is I'll just put a link in the BuzzNet chat. It's a very generic-y design document research type thing. It's not finished. It is the draft one, but it is not. Even that draft one isn't complete, so I'm still going to work on that. I'll probably take a couple more days to get that done.
Is that in your own public folder? Or is that in?
It is not in the group folder.
Okay.
But it goes over the process of designing games, defines a couple of terms, what genre is, game type is, what an asset is, a feature and an epic and all that sort of stuff. And then I've got 3 other documents that will split off from that, which I haven't started yet because I'm working on this one. But I'll continue to lob those over to the group as they get finished. I just thought I'd show you that quickly. It's, 13 pages, so you won't be able to go through the whole thing. But if you control click on one of those, if you control click on one of those numbers, you'll jump straight to the page.
Very nice.
Cool.
So that is the first thing. I'll keep lobbing them over because could probably help in getting some nice game.
What have you based that off, out of interest?
I'm just basing it off what I'm hearing in the group, when I think about things, what makes sense. Excuse me.
Can I say something? It's
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, okay.
So, and I just base it off whenever I read an article on the internet. I go, oh yeah, that's a pretty good point. Or the main reason is it's a combination of things that make sense and things that don't make sense. I try and always have things make sense. I use a lot of inspiration from other areas, like you saw dramatic beat just a couple of seconds ago. That's from film. And I think it works in games too.
I'll have to give this a read through.
But Yeah, everyone's free. It's licensed under the Creative Commons, but I can modify that any way I want, which means you can copy it, modify it, and I have to explicitly say this, so I'll explicitly say it now. You can use it for commercial usage if you want.
Yeah, I'll have to read through this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm going to go into more detail in a later document about how assets work in super explicit detail. And I'm also going to do some research into genres and game types, such as an MMO. I'll just write a really generic technical spec for what goes into an MMO. But yeah. The final thing I want to say is some less happy news. This is my last day in this live class because I'm not going to be continuing my member sponsorship for a little while.
Which made me very sad. But
Yeah,
Is this Arnsel?
it is.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll still be buying the non-member sponsorship stuff, like they just pay for buy stuff, but that won't get me into the MMO class.
Any particular reason? Just out of interest?
Probably the main reason is I paid for member sponsorship exclusively for this MMO class. I have no intention of watching any of the other member sponsorship unlocked content on 3D Buzz. Not because I don't like the content, just because it's not particularly relevant to me at this moment in time. And there's just not enough progress happening in the MMO project for me to keep paying $35 a month when I'm on a fairly tight budget at the moment.
Fair enough.
You think you might come back at some point?
Yeah, I'll come back every now and then and see what's going on. And hopefully I will still create assets for the project if someone I'll still be on 3D Buzz if someone says, hey, we need like the most awesome rock ever. I'll be like, okay, throw it at the group.
And absolutely, and that, I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, I knew when you came back in that you were struggling to fit that into your budget, and
yeah, and you know, I'll still be throwing these little game design document stuff at the group. I'll probably send it through Skype, and someone else can present it if they think it's good, because that's for my own game design stuff, but it'll be very useful for other things too, so I'll keep throwing them at the group even though I won't be here. And, yeah.
Aaron, I've still got you on Steam as well, so I can keep you updated through there.
Yeah.
And that works for me.
Oh,
I mean, you know, I'll certainly miss having you in the meetings, but I mean, if that's the way that you can continue on, then that's the way we'll take it.
Yeah. So that's me done for a couple of months, at least in these meetings.
Alrighty. Anybody out there? Do we have a lot of art to show tonight, or can we throw some more time at the design side after break?
I would like to go over what happened last week because I noticed the video got posted, but I didn't have a chance to actually watch most of it. I kind of flipped through it.
You're going to ask me for memory. Oh God.
I just basically was there a decision made on a particular art style or not? Because that was
No.
supposedly the reason.
Well,
There was a decision made.
Well, you were kind of leaning. I mean, anything can be changed, but leaning to Derek showed us like 4 different styles, and we thought their 2 were pretty compatible with each other. So.
Oh yeah, do you mean the style that's kind of similar to Borderlands 2, but with our own take on it?
I think so.
Yeah, he had kind of drawn inspiration from that, so there was like a real lanky character and a kind of Gage character, but I don't think anything was really nailed down, and I know Derek, with his schedule, really wants, you know, we don't want to do this in that kind of American fusion style that he draws in, because really he's the only one here who draws in that style, which would saddle him with doing all of the templates for the models. And
it's also really kind of, a lot of his work, there's not much variation for silhouettes in, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like manga. It's a fusion of manga, and yeah, all characters have some particular similarities that define that style, and they take away from silhouette in doing it. So, character-wise, I'm not sure where you guys want to be. I was looking at a game. The guy who made Braid is working with the team on a new game, and they were discussing the art style for the game where they don't even really have like normal or spec maps or anything else. It's very basic diffuse colors, very basic geometry, and then mostly they let the lighting do the work in-game. And I thought it was just spectacularly beautiful.
My question for you is, do they have a special lighting engine, or is it just like a regular lighting engine? Like,
I don't know. The blog was specifically talking about the art.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
think
don't
they've
even
probably
know,
got
like-
their own.
Yeah, I would
the
guess
image we're
that
seeing now from the game,
these are screenshots from the game, yeah.
yeah, it looks like they just have a global illumination engine, which handles all the niceties.
But I thought it was absolutely beautiful, specifically because of its incredible simplicity, which kind of screamed this project to me. But
Yeah, the problem with that is that it's good, I like it, but the problem is you kind of hit a point where something has to be, if something's simple enough, it has to be like perfect. You know what I mean?
oh
So I
yeah,
could-
I mean,
I do.
I could see
Yeah.
simple for like the environment and stuff like that, but we have the opportunity to do a lot more stuff with the characters. I really like the sort of style, like the cell shading that we're using in the comic. I would love to keep that in the engine, and I know we can do that. But like that is somewhat separate from the actual art style, though. That's more how is lighting going to interact with the characters. That's different.
I know, I think that is kind of an art style decision. If you want to go with a cell-shaded design, then that is an art decision. Well, obviously, I don't know if Nelson is actually awake. Probably
I was
not.
thinking if we could do like that sort of cell shading with the characters, and then a different system of shading for the environment, just to basically set the two apart.
I would. Not sure about having two distinct, different shaded models for environment and characters. It might look really obnoxious.
yeah, there have been a few games that tried it, and most of them it doesn't work out for. Like, I'm trying to remember the name of them, but they're not coming to the top of my head, but it just didn't work out for them, where they had like a really different art style for the background and the characters. Like, you have to keep them mostly the same, and then just change one or two different things if you want to like create contrast.
yeah, it's something where like in an actual animation, and manga and anime are notorious for it, where the backgrounds are a completely different style from the characters, and you can get away with that. But when you're actually playing a game and tracking specific characters, I think that could really start to draw on the eye if you don't have some things that tie that together.
What's the new Final Fantasy number? I can't remember.
109? I don't know.
15. I saw a couple of screenshots from that someone had just posted on Facebook of their character, rather than like the really pre-production ones that you get off their websites. But all the characters seemed to stand out from the backgrounds. Really, they just seemed photoshopped in. They didn't look like they belonged in the environment. They just had a horrible feel to it that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Which is, I think it's because they had a very kind of realistic approach to environments, but a more cartoony approach to characters, more manga, anime style characters, and it just did not gel well.
Yeah, and that's something that the animations do, and I don't know if it's because really you don't pay that much attention to the backgrounds when you're watching the shows, but they can get away with it, but I really don't think a game can, because they're much more integral.
What about Borderlands? They have,
think that
is
might be
that all
because the game's
cell
so big.
shaded? What?
It's all cel shaded, but there are elements that make the cel shading like it looks good, but when he's trying to track something in the distance with the cel shading, it sort of gets muddied and doesn't look so good. Like like looking at stuff in the distance in Borderlands just bothered the hell out of me when I was playing the game.
Yeah.
I think it has a good look.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to copy that so much as
Yeah,
take
and
inspiration from it.
this wasn't. I think we ought to do this if for no other reason than they already are.
There's
but
that kind of
we had
quite simple
talked-
geometry, quite
yeah,
complex
simple
textures.
geometry, and really, I mean, the textures are. This is a lot of diffuse texture, and even the diffuse isn't overly complicated.
No.
And-
Yeah.
And I just kind of like the idea behind it, I guess.
It definitely makes a strong point that you can go more simplistic nature and still have a good look.
And well, I guess the biggest point it made for me was the further you get from using photorealistic type textures, the more your game looks like your game.
This is
Yeah.
what I was mentioning before when I was trying to make people move away from photorealistic, because it just partly it's just time consuming, and secondly it doesn't kind of read very well. You need to get it really
you could see a
perfect to get it to
screenshot.
work well.
And you could see a screenshot and not know
That
what it
does
is.
look out of place.
Yeah, I linked into BuzzNet a shot from, not a particularly good shot, but a shot from Final Fantasy, and
But-
it's almost like they've used like 3-4 times more polys on the characters than they have on the backgrounds, or something like that.
Yeah. The other.
Haha! It looks like Daz Studio.
Yeah, it's just
Like the
just
background
obnoxious.
is a photo, and then you have this overly specular character in front of it. Yeah,
The-
I hate that.
The other thing about photorealistic is the closer you get to that, the more stiff your characters look if you don't have amazing animation. You know, like
Well, it also
when they're being
limits
still,
your
the
character
more odd they look.
variation. You kind of have to, if you go with a slightly more simple, I don't want to say cartoony, but it's kind of cartoony style, you can get away with a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, not cartoony, but
We make it
what's
8-bit.
the word? Caricature-y.
Stylized would be the word.
Yeah.
Stylized is a good word for it, yeah. It's one of those words that kind of doesn't define anything, but kind of means something in context. Anyway, that's been about an hour now, I think.
Yeah, we should take 5, 6, 7 minutes. Everybody, bathroom, coffee, whatever you want to get done. And I'm not seeing a ton of people on the art side in here tonight, so if we need to pick up some more things on the design side, we can. I would guess any of the art we do have is fairly directly involved with what we're talking about today. So let's do that. Nelson, you there?
Nope.
All right. Well, let's take a break for a little bit and come back in like 6, 7 minutes.
Ready?
All right, guys, welcome back from break. We're going to switch over and do the art side now and have a look at a couple of guys here who brought some stuff to the table, and then we will finish out our discussion on the design side. So starting out, Nelson, if you can grab Wolf, let's get that knocked out. See what we got going. What you got for us, Wolfie?
Am I live again?
You are live
Still
again.
delay. All right. This is page 7, which I'm feeling pretty happy with.
Yeah,
I was
looks
very
really good.
pleased with that one. That turned out really well after a little tweaking.
Right. A lot of tweaking.
Yeah, you did end up having to tweak that quite a bit. I wasn't as bothered by the skin colors, but
The skin mark stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I toned that down. It actually, I like it better this way. I understand Ray's point that I had, well, I could show that. Hold on. But that instead, I guess they looked a little more like could be drools or something.
yeah, I could see his point. At the time, I guess when I looked at it, I didn't even really notice, but then I know how the characters are supposed to be, so he had a valid point. I was very pleased with the trees when you reshaded those.
Oh yeah,
Came
yeah,
out very nicely.
yeah. The bark type stuff, different shadows and lighting.
Is this a point where I pretend I'm Derek and I ask Nelson when we're going to see these?
But yeah, oh yeah, I'll show. Like, I did do little firefly-like things Derek had asked for there when he found out it was a night. So I'm glad he didn't draw a big sun, I guess. No, it was a night. And these are supposed to be moths around this little lamp I added here.
Oh, very nice. It's one of my favorite environmental scenes.
Yeah.
It just came out really well. Blends very nicely.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, little stars up there if you notice. And I really like this one. I like the contrast of the bright light hitting her. And it's kind of fun. I mean, nighttime light can be more challenging, but it's also it tends to look a little better. It's more interesting because there's such a contrast between what is in shade and what is in light.
Well, yeah, a lot of your light's much more directional. It's at least easier to figure out sometimes.
Well, it's like during I mean, if it's sunlight, everything, the contrast isn't that, because there's bounce light everywhere, and it's more, it's a subtler thing. But this one, so I had to do at least like 2 main layers of shading or of shadow shading for this, a lighter one and a darker one, which on the daylight I tend to just do one. The difference. That's part of why.
Wolf, you'll really like a couple of the radio shows we have coming up. I've heard back from both Jonas DeRoe and Tyler Edlin, and they're both willing to come do radio shows. So you can pick the brains of some real pros.
Cool. Okay, this is Jizzbuzz.
Yeah, that's the one I just saw that today or yesterday.
Yeah. What?
Oh, I'm editing it. Like, Ray had some changes he needed made.
Yeah, did you get my feedback?
Yep, I'll get to it. Like, I just threw in the guys from the page 8, so I just made it bigger.
It's like one thing worth pointing out, I think these are just supposed to be leg guards. I don't think Elathians ever wear shoes. Here's, you got boots.
Oh, yeah, I just didn't define the toes particularly well.
Well, also they're standing like people stand with the heels down instead of the heels raised.
Yeah, it just read really bad when I tried to do it the other way, just because of the perspective. Like, it looked like they were on the ground just standing awkwardly, so I just did the human way.
Yeah, I know it's challenging to get that looking right, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see when the revision comes out.
Right, but
no worries.
I think definitely no boots because they're going to want to claw on things and stuff.
All right, cool. What else we got?
Yeah, that's what I have for this week.
Sweet. Next batter up.
I've got stuff.
If you could grab Nick, please.
Awesome.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, so I just did 2 quick environmental concept ones for like a human outpost, sort of based on some of the stuff we saw last week. So I made it all elevated with all kinds of like visible beams and stuff, and a spaceship because I wanted to put a spaceship there.
Because you have to have a spaceship.
Are you doing this? Are you doing this in Photoshop?
Yeah, I did that all in Photoshop. What was it? I downloaded some brushes from a site. I used those, but by and large, it was mostly just the default brushes.
You can do pretty much anything with those, but there are some custom ones out there that are very handy for time. But
Yeah, the one on the inside, both those little trees there were a brush, and so was the floor tile stuff. I just made use their square brush and use the perspective tool to slap that on the ground.
Nick, are you familiar with Jonas Duro?
No, I'm not.
Duro is two separate words, D-E and R-O.
Okay.
Look him up and then hunt up his DeviantArt page. He has an excellent Photoshop brush pack that he created that he doesn't care who uses it.
Okay. I was using whatever it was. I don't remember that site you linked me to earlier, like that guy's YouTube tutorials. I stole his brushes.
That might have been Tyler Edlund's.
Yeah, that's Tyler Edlund's, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got some nice ones too.
What else did I do? I've got the page 10, some of the revisions I was making. I got the wrong mage there, and there were too many mages, so I moved stuff around a little bit.
Sweet.
Yep.
The blue one's one that you're still finishing?
That's new mage. Which one's the grand mage? I'm having trouble keeping track of which one's which.
Boy, you got me. Wolf?
You need to ask. You need to ask Ray.
Okay.
You have
Because he said we talked. Yeah, he said we talked about it in class. I went back to the classes and I didn't see which one was talked about as the grand mage, or maybe it's just not.
Isn't the grand mage?
I think it's a woman.
Yeah, I know it's a woman. I just don't know which one it is because there's one saved as the water and one saved as the air, and you're doing the air, so I don't know if the air one is the grand mage or what's going on there.
No, I don't. The air is a man.
Yeah, the air's a man. That's the little wrinkly dude.
Yeah, because here, let me open up the rock box here.
I don't know that anybody came up with a design for her. I think Ray had said that that's one that we needed, but I don't think we ever got to actually. I think nobody's come up with any kind of design.
Oh, there's one in character
spoken
designs
about.
that was labeled as the wind mage. Like that one there was labeled as the wind mage. So is that the grand one instead, or what's? I don't know.
Oh, that was way back.
No, that has nothing to do with the comic.
Okay.
Yeah, this was back before we even started that. That was one of Sydney's.
Okay, I've got no idea then. All right, I'll have to have him email me and tell me.
You still have my copy of the Wind Mage, right?
Yep, that's still in my email.
Cool.
All right, but what else was there? I was thinking we could do textures just so we have really the brushes we're using showing, just because that would keep things relatively simple and make it look painty and stylized, and it would be relatively easy to do. So
Yeah, I'm down with that.
You could just use something like the rock in the background there. So you just use brushes and the smudge tool and just leave it like that, and then bake normals out of the brushes.
Yeah, I see no reason that we couldn't do that.
You talking about texture?
Yeah, talking about texturing now. Just because brushes are something everyone should be able to get even just basic brushes you can use in other programs other than Photoshop, so it wouldn't be too hard to do. And it definitely creates a real stylized look, and depending on how people are painting will sort of define the look of the game too.
What you use Max, don't you?
Yep, I use Max. I've got Max and Maya though.
Could you do up maybe just one quick rock and texture it out just to say this is what I meant? So
Yeah, sure, not a
Bring your
problem.
rocks.
Yep, we could do a
Rocks are
couple
awesome.
different things too. I could pull Speed Tree out of UDK and maybe just do some stuff in UDK with painted textures. It wouldn't be quite the same because UDK makes everything shiny, but at least it would give you an idea.
Yeah,
So I
it's
just have-
UDK to Unity is very different looks. But
Yeah, in terms of the shininess, but in terms of the actual painted texture, it wouldn't be too different, I don't think.
Quick question for you, Nick.
Yeah.
As far as that ship goes, was that just a quick sketch on the canvas, or did you have a model for that in mind?
No, I was just spot black, basically. I did the engines first and then drew the shapes so it fit with the engine, like flare things.
Okay. Are we looking at that from the side or sort of like under the belly kind of thing?
I really don't know. I just kind of drew it there.
You mind if I kit bash a model?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right.
Yep. All I know is it's going up. That's the only thing.
Yay for black silhouettes.
Yep. I also did black and white.
I would really like to see a rock or maybe on the human side just a generic wall or something. And
Okay, yeah. I'll see if I can get that done this week. And that's pretty much all I have.
all right, awesome. On the art side, okay, well you guys are working the comics. We don't really have anybody else here doing art. You're going to work on those models.
All right, well,
so hello.
I can show off a model I made. It's not really to do with this project, but it could lead in the future.
Okay.
All right.
Let's pull up Mr. Ion.
It's nothing super impressive, so don't expect a whole load.
Oh, then I don't want to see it.
I think it'll be spectacular.
This is usually the point where Steven would tell you to stop talking like that. Or Derek, rather.
Yeah, but it really is not impressive.
But it might be. I'm a crappy modeler, so.
I can show you something that's impressive, but I didn't do it.
Oh, speaking of textures, aren't there a lot of places where you can get free textures that
Yeah, that's something
royalty-free?
Yeah, there's a good place called cgtextures.com.
Yeah, that's very good if you're doing photorealism.
Very
Yeah.
high quality stuff, and you don't need to pay in order to use them.
As long as you don't mind getting relatively low resolution things, or
They do
tiling
have
it yourself.
Yeah, you have to tile the high resolution stuff yourself, but
Yeah.
he still does give out high quality stuff for free.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I will overlay onto a texture, I steal from those guys all the time.
But yeah, there is something I am trying to find useful tutorials out there, is how do you make textures yourself from scratch, like from the photographing stage to getting onto a model of the same object.
Well, how do you make photo? I was going to say I can
Like,
show you how to
let's say
paint
I have a
something.
let's say I have a calculator and I want to make a 3D model of this calculator, and I want it textured, and I want to use a photograph of that calculator that I've taken myself, and I'm having a lot of difficulty finding information on the internet on how to do that.
A lot of it is photo manipulation. Like, you just need to take a couple photos from different angles so you can stick them on the right faces of the calculator. And then you basically have to know how to know how to use the Photoshop tools to like tweak the perspective so it actually sits on the model right. And how to unwrap the UVs so it does that.
I'm looking for information on how to do that step where you take the photos and you turn them into an unwrapped texture.
It's more you have to unwrap it first and mark which side is which, and then you just match the photos with the...
No, this isn't the 3D model study. This is the photos. How do you get the photos into a nice texture format?
If you're doing like a full, if you're doing something like a calculator, take a photo from the top, one from each sides, like the top and the bottom, and then underneath it, just like straight on, and then just slap it on a box and it should look like a calculator, or pretty close to it. And then you can just sort of tweak things till it looks right. If that made any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I'm sure I'll do that one day.
It depends on which way you're approaching it. Are you trying to build a texture sheet first, or are you going to UV the model and then put the texture onto the UV?
Yeah, I really don't know.
However you do it, it's going to be an abstracted version of the real world object. It just depends which way around you decide to do it.
And what I'm doing is I'm looking for information on how to do that process.
One thing I'd like to do eventually is sort of essentially setting up the UVs on a low detail model and then having a high detail model used as a reference to sort of bake the textures using that low poly template.
Anyway,
that's pretty easy in Max. It's a bit harder if you're using something like ZBrush though.
If you have Mudbox and Max, you can actually import if you have the latest version of Mudbox and Max, like the whatever 2013, you can directly import the you can bake the high resolution texture in Mudbox onto the low res tech model you imported, and then just dump it all back into Max. So it's pretty easy with some of the stuff. And there are programs that are free that you can do sort of something similar with. You just have to be really careful with how you unwrap the objects.
Yeah.
I think it's
to learn the ZBrush method, but ZBrush.
See, it's $600. I've never used it.
I tried the trial for a bit, but getting my head around it's a bit. It's just the fact that it uses such a different kind of camera system than something like Max, which I'm so used to. It's like I spent half the time learning to keep things in edit mode.
I put a link to the model I made, or it's a render of the model, in the BuzzNet chat, and right above it is that super impressive thing that I said I could find. Yeah. Whoever's got that awesome.
Oh, is that still my screen? Probably.
Your person.
It's the not yellow brick road. Nice. It's hard to tell from this angle. Does that tile?
It is tiled.
It is?
It was a square plane subdivided and then tiled along a path. I could show you it in the in Blender if you wanted to see that.
Oh, I was just curious. 'Cause at the angle, I mean, it could have been a not tiling texture, and it would have been hard to tell.
Yeah, it was a tiling texture. I got it from CG Textures for free, so it's really low res. That's why it's kind of ugly, but yeah, it still looks fine.
And up close, a lot of AAA games are surprisingly low res too. So
yeah, well,
Skyrim's a good example of that. They just
that
have
model
lots of objects in their scene.
That model in particular is not optimized for games. I'm just going to post a version that would work in a game. That's what it would look like in the game version.
yes, those are very impressive models.
Yep, I'm seeing a lot of surface scattering and stuff like that there too, so it'd be hard to get into a game engine. That's how the grass is glowy, I think.
Oh yeah, that's movie modeling, not game modeling.
Yeah.
Yep.
someday.
But the second one, that's what it would look like if it were in a game, because it's got no physical deformation. I'd probably greeble some sticking
You
up.
could probably get the same level of detail using a bump map if you really wanted.
Yeah. Oh, that is not mapped.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's no reason why, dependent on the engine you're using, you couldn't have a bump map. I'm not sure if Unity can do it, but UDK could do it perfectly fine. You might need like Unity Pro to get bump maps in. I've not messed around with that side of Unity much though, so.
Oh, you can bring normals into regular Unity.
Yeah, but can you bring like displacement bump maps in?
That is a fine question. I can't even get Unity to work on my computer, so it'll run CryEngine and UDK, but
yeah, that's what I've done in terms of 3D modeling. I'm going to start learning to draw pretty soon because I want to do orthographical views. I think drawing them would be a lot easier than taking a photo.
Yeah, it could be.
And
oh,
also I don't know how to draw.
Richard, stop showing me this stuff. That's not right.
I know, it's kind of mean, isn't it?
Right, so
Oh, 600.
next thing.
All right. I think we about covered art then, haven't we?
It kind of seems that way.
So.
Alrighty. Awesome. Is there anything in particular anybody wants to work on modeling besides what I already made Nick do?
I'll try my hand at making that that spaceship of his.
All right, cool. Is Ron still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Ah, there he is. You were crystal-y type rocks, right?
Well, I mean, I was looking at some of those concept images you guys were looking at, and then along with the comic book, of course. I mean, there's just a lot of octagonal gems,
Oh yeah,
crystals, and
crystals.
formations.
Crystal formations figure largely into the Alethian side of things, so absolutely, if you want to play around with some of those.
Now, what kind of level of detail? I mean, do I want to put chips and stuff like that in this, or is that something that's going to be, well, I guess scratches come from textures. But anyway, I mean, would I want to mark this up?
You're the artist.
I would certainly give it a shot. I mean, you know, we don't want to have any poly counts that are crazy for some crystals, but yeah, a few nicks or chips out of it, whether it's modeled in or, you know, done with normals.
Okay.
You know, certainly things like chips or scratches on face surfaces we could just do with normal maps. But if you've got a corner or something that's got a chunk out, yeah, sure, model that out.
Yeah, that's a little bit more along the lines of what I was thinking of.
Yeah. We don't want everything to be absolutely perfect.
All right.
That would be cool. And Wolf, I mean, comic books pretty much keeping you busy, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna try some. I'm gonna try some things, gun things.
For a concept or for modeling?
in old style kind of different things.
As concepts or try some models?
No, just concept stuff.
Concepts, okay. Yeah, awesome. I think that would be just fine, and that pretty much covers, I'm not missing anybody, am I, on the art side?
I don't think so. No one's spoken up, so...
Anybody else is certainly welcome to rock in if they want to, but, I know Iron's thrown quite a bit just at documentation and mechanics. And Chris, I've seen your models, they're spectacular, but then we won't have a guy designing the game, so...
Well, design only goes up so far, and then when we get actual
and then
production,
you'll be leaping in. But yeah, sounds good. Sounds all right. You guys have what you want to work on. What do we want to cap off? We got 20 minutes or so on the design side.
I'd like people to kind of think about what they want to play in the game, as I was saying before, and I'll just keep kind of going off with the current plan and discussing things and whatnot.
I like sneaky characters.
On a round time, like how long do you want a single round to go for? Most MOBA games are about 40 minutes plus.
Yeah, most MOBA games run 20 to 40 minutes.
I would say 20 minutes under if I were asking for a MOBA game, because I hate the long MOBA time limits.
It's something that I'm interested in looking at, but I'm not kind of going to call it at this point.
It seems like we really need to start playing something and kind of get a feel for what is fun and when it kind of reaches a point where...
Let's just make characters and then go hit each other and decide how long would be a good time to do that. Like when we start getting tired of beating each other up, that's probably the good time to stop PvP.
Well, it's projecting how long you want a game to last and how much power you want, how much character progression you want, and kind of the choice points where characters kind of tip over from being in a leveling up phase to actually being able to fight each other, like face to face, actually just fight each other rather than kind of sneaking around trying to gain levels, trying to gain one up on the opponent. So it is based on.
Well, after the 12th hour, it starts to get a little tiring. But I would say just keep it under 12, and you're good.
I was going to say I'm good up to 18, but that's just me. Darn it. One sec.
Yeah, something in the range of like 20 to 40 minutes, probably might slightly
See, I'm like Day of
lower than.
Defeat and things like that, so if you ask me, I'm going to be like, if it goes more than 20, it took too long. But I'm a terrible person to ask.
It also depends on what you're going to be doing. I mean, if you're going to be like seizing bases and stuff, I mean, sometimes some games just take a little longer for things to, you know, to take objectives and stuff. And you know, if you're not having a lot of objectives, then you need less time.
Yeah, I wouldn't institute like a time limit, but I'd be aiming for games to sort of project it to be 20 to 40
no
minutes.
time limit, but a time goal.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of yeah, it just kind of comes down to how much you want the player to progress before bringing the game to a close. Because if it's too soon, characters don't actually have much time to develop, and strategies don't have much time to kind of come into play. But if it's too late, then you just end up kind of everyone gets to their full progression, and there's no kind of advantage to a lot of strategies. Early kind of pushing strategies become less important, and that means there's sort of less choice.
Well, it also depends. If we're going to have multiple game modes, like say things that are objective-based, like taking bases and whatnot, but or just more of a team deathmatch stuff. Like if you you have a mode like that where it's just counting, you know, it's the first team to get however many kills or something. That would be a much shorter game.
Yeah, I'm just focusing on one game type at the moment, but you know, I'm keeping in mind we might want others. And the thing is, like, there's a lot of scope. This is something that's come up quite a bit in the discussion I've been having on the forums regarding the current concept design. There's loads of scope to add sections, add game types, modify things, play around with stuff when we actually get to the testing. What we're kind of setting down now is the vision of it, rather than the concrete, this is exactly how it's going to be, and if it's not, you know, if it doesn't work, well then we'll just have to deal with it. Yeah, you know, we will test and modify and iterate on these ideas as we go on.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Can we talk about the role of stamina?
What in particular about it?
I have a quick question about the concept design document you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
How many pages do you have behind the scenes written?
What you've seen is what I've written. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what I've thought out and that's what I've kind of fully considered. That's just what's made it onto paper currently.
Okay.
A lot of the discussion on the forums kind of disrupted my progression on that, because it was quite kind of heavy-hitting, defining exactly what the game is sort of discussion, rather than quibbling over more small things. So yeah, there's not much actually been written past what's already on the Dropbox.
I think related to the stamina, one thing I'd like to definitely see is an ammo mechanic for the guys that are using the guns.
Why? What does that?
How
What
about
benefit
we use
does that?
stamina as ammo? You shoot your energy at the people. You get really tired if you shoot lots.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
even today, you do have to go back and get ammo from time to time. So, I mean, that could be one mechanic that's different between Alethians and humans. We have to go back and get ammo. They just have to go until they get tired.
Not convinced by that.
Yeah, I don't know
Well,
if it's
you
fun
think-
to...
There's lots of things that there's an awful lot of things that impacts on. It's something we might play around with later, but
Would it be
I'm
easier
not
just
sure
to
about
tie it into a stamina type thing where You know, like on the Alethean side, if they're casting spells, they run out of stamina and they've got to
I don't like
re-up
the idea
for.
of finite resources that don't refresh over time for activated abilities. Because if you have to, if for example with ammunition, if you had ammunition being a resource like mana or stamina or something like that, and the only way you could continue to fight was to return to a base and pick up ammunition, head back out, that would severely impact on the player's mobility.
Hey,
You might
No,
have to,
no,
in the middle of a fight, just immediately stop because you run out of ammunition.
No,
And
I
then
mean
you have
for it
other
to be
problems.
tied to something like mana where you just have, you know, a 15-second cooldown period or whatever before you're re-ammoed up.
Yeah,
A sort
or
of a
maybe
reloading
I
mechanic
just,
rather than a...
maybe a supporting character that could supply that ammunition to you if they're close enough.
Potentially.
And I guess that ties into whether or not you're going to do that on the Alethean side. Are they going to have cooldown periods for, you know, are they going to use up mana or just have specific spells have specific cooldowns?
The problem with having an ammo system like that is that you essentially mandate that every single character has a ranged weapon has to have some form of ammo. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. If you know what I mean.
yeah. I just posted a link on the BuzzNet chat to the Fate RPG rulebook. Now, it's for a pen and paper style role-playing game, so it can't directly apply to what you're doing. But what's interesting is, instead of having ammo or weapons, they roll for everything. You roll to see if you have ammo to fire your weapon, rather than say, I have 10 ammo in my inventory. They don't have that.
That would be horrible in my opinion, just because it would be more of a random element when you're trying to do something just like
I don't
what
think
you're trying
he's
to do
meaning
is
that
just
implementing
switching,
that exact system.
Yeah. I just think it's an interesting take on it.
I mean, you could even do something where you tie it into ability cooldowns, where you have so many shots, then you have a longer cooldown to wait before you can use it again, just for like reload time or something like that on some
That's a
ability.
particular character ability. That's, you know, the way you write particular character abilities rather than having a general rule. What I really want to have in particular is a generic system for characters that means that we can create any specific character from those core rules, and the characterization comes through in the abilities that they possess rather than anything else about them. So it's all about kind of your character's abilities, what they can do in the game, rather than modifying the base rules, you know what I mean?
Well, I guess that's what I was getting at, was that it would be more tied to your character than to having to go get ammo or specific weapons or...
Yeah.
As far as how I'm looking at stamina would be not there'd be the normal attack like I mean, I think it's pretty standard in RPGs where there's the normal attack that doesn't really cost any stamina, but the skill when you start using your skill stuff, you start using stamina. So it's how many skills you can spam at one time before you lost your stamina. And as far, like, I think it's interesting to say for melee having someone who a melee guy who's, you know, some warrior who has ability to attack, kind of go all out with the stamina to use kind of a stamina burn type thing, you know, and you just go out.
What you seem to be describing is very similar to how sort of mana works as a general resource. So you could have characters that have stamina as a resource that they use and their activated abilities. That's what it seems to be. What you're
so like if you're going up to, you know, I mean, it's as far as situational skill, like if you're going up to someone and if you're dealing with an enemy and they're about dead or something, it might and there's no one else around, it makes sense to just use all your, you know, do like it's almost like change a different stance to really aggressive that uses up your stamina, but you're able, really fast, but you're able to finish them faster so you can move on and go somewhere else. But if you're, if you're not careful and there's someone else right there, then you go, uh-oh, now I'm a cooldown with all these skills right now because
Yeah.
I used all my stamina for that. I think that can add a level of interest and a level
That
of
is, yeah, as I
skill
said,
and
that's
participation from the player.
pretty much exactly what a mana-like system, a resource system would, and I intended to include that anyway. Certain characters have certain resources. Stamina would be one of them. Mana would be another. There'd be various dependent on characters.
As far as range guys go, I would say it's the same thing as the melee. It's like you have your normal attack where, if you're not using any skills and stuff, you're just, you're shooting every, however often, a bullet goes out or whatever when you fire, but and that's just your normal attack. But if you go use a skill, then that's going to, like a skill to increase your aiming ability, to say, you're going to more likely to hit a vital organ or something, so you do more damage or like critical, and then that takes stamina. So if you're going to use those special things, they take stamina. So you kind of want to, you don't want to necessarily, like if you're going to have to defend yourself on other fronts and do other things, you don't want to exhaust all your stamina right away. You want to use it thoughtfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's as I said, it's very much a resource system. What you're describing is basically exactly how mana works, and how I would include stamina, dependent on particular characters.
I just think that adds a lot of skill possibilities. They're not, of strategy is my main.
Yeah.
But so with that, I think that's the basic thing that we were talking about earlier with having more skills. If you have, if you have stamina, you're not going to be able to spam. If you're worrying about stamina costs, you're not going to be able to spam all those skills. You're still going to have to be really thoughtful. So I think that would safeguard what you're worried about.
Well, as I've said on a couple of occasions now, that's already in the design. That's something I've included. It might not be in the document right now, but it is something that I kind of have been including.
Chris, in terms of the initial alpha PvP, what are we thinking in terms of characters per side, different characters per side?
Different characters per side, as in?
A doable number, like
asymmetrical or symmetrical?
What I mean is, do you mean the number of players in a match, or do you mean the potential classes that a player can select from?
The potential classes for the alpha. That's a doable number.
Not sure. Quite low, probably in the range of 3 or 4 a side, so 6 to 8.
I like 3 because that was a number I had in my head.
Well, the point is you want to be able to make sure you have at least one character for each role available to each side.
You kind of need a support character, don't you? Need something like a healer.
Well, traditionally you need a support tank and a striker, or DPS. So you need someone to do damage, someone to take damage, and someone to heal and/or control the other players in the arena. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about numbers that far ahead. I'm still kind of working on gathering intel, gathering information about what kind of characters people want to play to design the combat system.
Well, and I only asked basically in regards to that. I think going away for this week, everybody should come up with their idea of what those three should be to start out, and then what their Alethian counterparts would be in a very general aspect.
I think for me personally, it would be more useful for people to think about really, really edge case characters, like something that really epitomizes this world in a character. So, like an Alethian mage that has particular powers because they're an Alethian rather than they're like a Dungeons and Dragons mage. If you appreciate the difference,
Okay.
What does being an Alethian give you, or being a human in this world give you, that it doesn't give you in other games? If you know what I mean.
Gotcha.
They're the kind of edge cases which really reflect the state of the world into the mechanics.
Okay, so what if we say two on each side? Just so that we have something that I expect everyone to come back with next week?
I don't know. I don't really want to force people to do that. I just want people to take a look at that thread, have a think, post some stuff. This is really for my edification, and it's for not impact, it's for information for me to kind of feed back into the system. Really, I'd like everyone to read that thread and post a character they would like to play, at least one.
What thread?
It is the character types thread in the MMO design and game mechanics.
Let me grab it here quick.
I'll link it directly. Also, if you are looking for something to do, read everything on the forums. And yes, I know a lot of those posts are long, but sometimes they kind of need to be long.
All right.
Are you saying I'm long-winded?
I'm saying I'm long-winded.
I don't know if we're going to be able to come up with something that no game has done before, though. That's kind of
Well, there's no... Yeah, but they are not going to.
Well, there's no
We're
necessary...
not
I mean...
trying to reinvent the wheel, and we're not trying to completely and utterly break the mold and blow everyone else out the water. It's what you want to
I
play.
want to reinvent the wheel.
Well,
My own wheel.
I can give you a rock and like another rock to hit it with until you're happy.
But yeah, it kind of goes
I
back
want
to
to make
this.
it out of
Anyway,
Yes?
moving on.
It kind of goes back to the saying about story. There are no new stories, just the variation on all the themes. So I guess I'm not particularly worried about whether or not we come up with something spectacularly original, just as long as we come up with something that makes sense in the game and to this story. That's, but all right, so we'll leave it at everybody at least read that post, and everybody at least post one character that's here tonight.
post one character or one skill that you'd like to say. Ability.
One character type, and flesh that out.
Who do you want to play as in the game?
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of things do you want to be able to do? That kind of is epitomized in a character.
For instance, if I were to post on it, I would want some sort of more assassin type character.
Well, so whoever's screen is currently showing your meme center to everybody. There we go.
You know, I would post some sort of assassin type character who cannot take a lot of damage, but can be very difficult to find, and you play purely on your stealth. I like those kind of characters, so that would be the type of thing I would write out.
He hunts down the snipers.
Spot them, he dies instantly. I don't even have to hurt him.
But so can we all agree to that? We'll get at least one into that forum listing.
Yeah, that's fine.
And if nothing comes to mind, Wolf, don't panic over it. If you have an idea and you don't want to post it, but you'd like to send it to me, then send me a PM or something. Yeah, I'm happy to talk with people kind of outside of threads.
Awesome. Well, on that note, guys, and what would we like to discuss for next week so that people can start getting their heads around that?
Design-wise, I'm going to have to think about that, and I'll post a post tomorrow or something. But generally, just read the forums and post and generally get involved. And I know there are some threads which get really long and drawn out, but they need to be discussed, and that's sort of the only way to do it sometimes.
Descriptive.
Alrighty, so we will plan on discussing some of the stuff that's been listed in the forums. We'll discuss the character types everybody came up with, and everybody will try to come up with at least one. It would be really great if you could come up with one and its counterpart on the other team. But whatever you can get up there, as long as we got something to move forward with. Sound good, guys? All right. On that note, Nelson, you can take us out of here and get on with your evening, and I will see everybody either on the forums or next week.